Well, good afternoon and welcome to a very special PoemWorks reading. My name is Richard Waring and I've been a part of this community since before the turn of the century. And I would like to begin just briefly. I often will read quotes at the beginning, and today's quotes all come from our beloved mentor and director of the PoemWorks Workshop for Publishing Poets, Barbara Hyett. These are some of my favorite barbarisms. Better your poem suffers your absence than your intention. You've told it well, but not enough. Write a poem, then cleanse it of all the words that a fourth grade class would expect to find in a poem of this subject. Take two poems and attach them sideways. Write so you make what comes before terrible. I love this one. Folks, it's time for heroics. And lastly, poets don't sit in their cars and mind their own business. Or as Wendy Drexler once put it, Barbara knew how to lead a poem to water and teach it to drink. And now I want to spotlight and feature our featured poet, channeling Barbara, Alexis Ivy. Take it away, Alexis.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here today. Yeah, Barbara helped me find a voice, so I'm so privileged to be giving her one today. So I'm going to be reading from Come Thunder. And the poems I chose, I'm just going to say why I chose them real quick before I read them. I'm going to begin with All Night the Waves. I feel like she had read a poem by Michael Mack, another poet that's a local, and just was profoundly affected by it and kind of riffed off of his writing, which I found really great in this poem. So, All Night the Waves. 1. My name is bedtime. Everything is on my floor. All night the waves. All night the shouting. I am alone among everything on the floor. My small bed, my M&Ms. I am alone, or maybe there's a bear, stuffed flatly, not growling, but a kind of motorized grind from behind his red felt lips. My name is Sleepy. The bear will not be quiet. My parents forget me from the living room. 2. My name is Morning. On my street, all the doors are open. Sometimes they're closed. Sometimes there are no grown-ups all day. We have no keys. Nothing of mine breaks here. The doors are solid firmament and all the keyholes stars. The keyholes kneel to see themselves. The sea breathes every hour. I keep a plaid umbrella on my doorknob. Sometimes I borrow. Sometimes I make a poem of my life.
Hey Alexis, actually, can I just have one request? Can you tell
Yeah.
the page number when you have a one to read?
Definitely. The
Thanks.
next poem is on page 26. I'm reading this one just because it's really funny, and she just was a really funny person and is a really funny person, and so I just love this one. I should have had my nose done. When I was 16, instead of using character to pull me through the waiting and the hoping to be chosen, when I knew the girls with tiny noses had it made, the ones with perfect turns up the ends were happy to be necking at the drive-in, making fog enough to fill the front windows and their panties while I watched the movie in the back seat with my boyfriend. Every senior knew which nose should stay and which should go, and though I loved the company of noble Cyrano, it was a tough act to follow for a kid with aspirations. Like the dances and the parties where my nose gave up prominence to a boy's fat kisses on my tongue. I knew that changes could be made. Late at night, I ironed away the steamy wrinkles on my cotton blouse after trysting in the back seat of a boy's father's car. I believed in miracles, plastic surgery, black eyes, the bandages, and courage of the fancy girls who didn't have to work after school, the ones who looked at me with such despair. Oh, my own Pinocchio, where are the snow white noses now that I have grown and you have stayed the same? This next poem, and I love the way Barbara she writes persona poems so remarkably, and so I'm reading a couple from her latest book. This is on page 38, Painted Horse on the Carousel. The ones who come to ride kick my flanks and saddle me with herdings, chase me from here to kingdom come. I will not take the bridle, even if they press shut my snout, even if they pull my ears. Pain is the fury I thrive on. I am hoof-kicked, the chestnut force of life hereafter, the once in utter certainty, the hot, raw center of the business. My body stands where it is, meets its assignments, life by life, as I was made to, as I want to. This next poem is the whole chapter 2, which is titled Transparency. It's on page 41. I feel like a lot of us were here when Barbara had this experience with a monarch in a jar. So I just wanted to read this one for everyone.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what year that was. I feel like it was like 2005 or 6. It was a while ago. Anyway, Monarch in a Jar. 1. Light made seeing easy, the sun falling under. I could tell by 2 spots that it was a male. All night I had to calm him, to keep his wings from tearing. I lay in my bed beside him in his jar. He hung quite still. I could hear his breath resting, his wings drying geometries. By dawn, I could see pink tips, shades of stasis, a double undoing, something new. 2. Last Tuesday, I watched the caterpillar climb the smooth glass wall of the jar, quickly, choose its spot on the bench I had stood in there, and he hung onto it attached by the very top of his head, tail curled up into a capital letter, J. All of it clinging by gossamer, matter of another kind, no more to be striped hunger. 3. What happened next was the shaking. It trembled horribly, convulsing the curvy swoon, shocks of celadon winding, until it was not itself anymore, but jade. It shined, that stone. It pouted wetly and seemed hard, though I didn't touch it. Chrysalis, the first puzzle piece, a signal flag bound to the self it couldn't know, and within itself, an assistant self, throat ringed with beads of gold. I feared it would fall off the branch, so heavy it seemed. Still it held, shook there a while, in the work of its living. 4. I stayed up all night with it as it turned blue, darker into the sheer air of transparency. Hints of shape pressed and folded like a lavendered bedsheet. Something in there was moving the way something moves or not in every political direction. Then I heard a blue kind of softening. Years of nights I used to breathe beside the faces of my children. I was nothing but lullaby then. I stared and I stared when suddenly I could see inside a host of miniature, origami stained glass wings I almost took for the face of God. 5. Noon, precisely. I carried the jar outside, across the street to a neighbor's garden, those asters billowing. I took off the screen I devised roughly as a lid to set him flying, but he didn't go. I coaxed him with my voice. He climbed out over the lip of the jar. I couldn't believe this. Out onto the back of my hand and farther onto my wrist, onto my forearm where he stopped, every weightless speck of him working the map of his celestial mind, rooting himself ingeniously, due self. 6. I didn't really see him go. Maybe a spark in the trees behind my house. Green fact, blue, jubilant world. Let me too be flung out, wholly new, into that self-same lucky span.
Gorgeous.
I'm moving on to chapter 3, which is Proof of the Spinning World. It was funny when I was choosing these poems, I noticed there's so many questions being asked. So I chose a lot of poems with questions and a lot of poems with answers, it felt like. So this next poem takes place at Split Rock Cove, which a bunch of us had taken a poetry workshop with Barbara throughout the years. She taught a few there. And Sandy Weissman's here, so I definitely wanted to share it. Poem at Split Rock Cove. Brush fire, watching fire as if it were sunrise yellowing. Say what you see, says the fire. I study the beach, rockweed tangled in stones. Pull at the barnacles attached to the stones. I squeeze bulbous seeds that refuse to yield. Resist, the rockweed cries from the daily apocalypse. Hold to things slow and hard, says the tide. Believe in the hard, says the hard. The people in chairs sit on. A whale blows in the harbor, lifts its life without us in mind. Nothing is as it seems, not the 5 who stare at fire, not tide loudly lapping the fishing pier, not the ladders, not even the pile of empty lobster traps, not expecting a thing at all, though the painted peeled buoy is bobbing. Be fair, says the buoy. Look again, says the sky. The next poem I'm going to read is on page 86.
86?
Yes. Hold on one sec. And this poem is dedicated to Wendy Drexler, and it takes place in France, which I know she had spent a lot of time with a PoemWorks, so I wanted to share this one and just her friendships with people. Latitude 40 North. I'm going to take one more sip of water. Latitude 40 North. No road signs, no instructions in the glove compartment, no way to shift into reverse in the rented Renault. The moon is full and screaming orange over onion fields. The sky not black exactly, mottled like a dog. There seems to be ditches ahead on both sides. I could read by the visor's tidy lamp, unreadable maps. I could try singing or eat dried apples from the bag, but real danger's too thin to swing around. Think dancing, think dandelions come up through a sidewalk crack despite the odds. Isn't it possible for things to come out right? Maybe someone set out to find me. Are those lights in the distance as steady as stars? Think stars before there was cosmos. Who has not been lost in this world?
Mm. Mm.
This next poem is on 87, and it's another persona poem. To be a sloth, and it has an epigraph. Life is a lesson in humility. James Barrie. So sweet up there, moving rarely, waking rarely, and I climbed up, dared up, balanced even without a tail, bound by gravity swaying me slowly on one dumb dare. My whole self out on a limb, unrhythmed, unrhymed, clumsy even. Who will love me now that I have shown how brave I am?
God.
And the last poem I'm going to read is the last poem in the book on 91. Proof of the Spinning World on the Provincetown Ferry. What I want is lightning as we whip the turn from good to wild, and seabirds, everyone shining, low flying the trammel of clams, the whole blue-black swath as one at once, breaking the dusk like a bell, crying out their strange elation among the mackerel clouds. The air a monolith, a creed. I stand watchful on the upmost deck while the sky bruises, red sun leaning into hard, audible rain. Come thunder, and the thrill sets in. The moon slips out, silvered, sultry, that kind of otherwise beauty, and in the face of it, a certain callousness. Thank you so much.
So awesome, Alexis. In sickness and in health, you still channel Barbara beautifully. Thank you so much. And now I want to move us further toward the sharing that we're going to be doing about Barbara's workshop. And I want to begin with a poem compiled by Ellie Mamber that's in this wonderful book.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And the poem is called Poetry Workshop. I like the title, but not for this poem. Start here. Goodbye sense, hello sound. Isn't that fabulous? God, who wouldn't read the rest of that? Look at this. Use it to lift lines to give some hope to your half-dead things. Let's figure out how this stuff works. This poem has so much confidence. Come up with a theory about your line breaks. Who writes like this? Everything she doesn't say is so interesting. Scrapes it right back. What you are doing is naming the jellyfish and people. I don't like these hands and feet. No one is saying, did you say it as it really was? No, just what the words do for us. It's just something told. It's not a poem yet. There's nothing new here. We need an Aristotelian sensibility. Everything happens for the first time. It's your job to write and recreate a whole experience for the reader. That's poetry. But you need to practice many, many years to say orange. Just create an acoustic chamber for words. Open it up, take it out. Who cares? Who gives a shit? If she didn't do it, why tell us? If you're lucky, it's not going to be what you intended. Oh, she's getting defensive. I can't tell you the force of it. Breaking atoms. The deeper the abstraction, the more intimate the response. The context is absent. I don't get it. Don't bury this in metaphor. No, 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 you can't have the blood-stained road. This is just not ephemeral enough for a villanelle. What is the pejorative of a poem? Is it the poem's job to make us feel sorry for you? Do the hair, Ellie, until you weep. Now here, we need the spiritual cry. We all have a folder full of them. I would love for you to say, I have always disobeyed God. You need 3 syllables to lean on the meaning. Well, here's a salvo to grace. You are under the rubric of, what do I believe? Simple is heartbreaking. Simple. Overwrought here, too much there, drama, drama. You absolutely may not use any more hyphenated anythings. Break my heart. Torture us. Every word is a raw bottom bone. Just exquisite here. Whatever you do, keep that. Oh my God. But it needs to be about someone's heart. Cut and paste, glue them together. Way too easy. That's too easy. Do the hair, Ellie, until you weep. But that, darling, that is really, sublime. Breathtaking. We'll let you have 1 hyphen. Porcelain and plastic do not belong on the same cliff. I didn't read this in Emily Post. You cannot cover the entire relationship in 1 poem. Stop this. We don't know what the poem knows. What we care about is the question. Do the hair, Ellie. Do your mother's hair until you weep. So I will begin with the sharing and say that I had written a poem many years ago about observing a cluster of monarch butterflies in a lilac bush in September that were like a new orange foliage for the bush. It was a bush on fire. And so I brought it to the workshop, and Barbara said, just sort of as an aside, you know, they also fly over the Empire State Building. And I was, well, that's interesting. Yeah, there's more to their migration than this lilac bush. And I happened to mention that I knew that some scientists had discovered that the monarchs make a right-hand turn when they're flying over Lake Superior because there used to be a glacier there, and that was the way they always did it. And she said, I don't see that anywhere in the poem. And so bit by bit, she built up this humble beginning of a poem into something far more ambitious than I ever intended or knew I could do. And it became a kind of anthem that went into my complete, full first book of poetry. Monarchs passing through New England. They arrive in September, storm kings landing in lilacs, chitinous orange frames, leaf heavy, a new kind of foliage. Scientists say they make a right-hand turn in the middle of Lake Superior, a blind thirst to follow an ancient, long-gone glacier. They turn singularity into collective, a wave of wings, craving an updraft, a rise over the empire, state building like any mountain, spreading the arms of summer across a continent. I too ache to make a wild dogleg turn, to rise and fall, fit tongue and groove into a new story. And now I'd like to bring on board Carrie Loftman.
Hello, everyone. I had known Barbara for probably 35 years before I even joined her workshop. And that's a fact that I regret all the time. And I finally joined, and my attendance was kind of intermittent at the very best, because I couldn't get myself organized enough to write enough, or to make the time in, you know, the crazy lives we all lead. My last workshop with Barbara was in July of 2018. It was a Thursday morning. It was a great workshop, of course. When it was over, everyone else had left. She held me back. She found out that I was walking to the D line to take the train back to Brookline. And she said, "Oh, no, no, no. You're not going back to Brookline right now. You are going down the street to the Newton Library, and you're going to sit there with the poems you brought today, and you're going to work on them." Because she said, "You know, you're pretty good, but you could be so much better if you took the time and if you worked harder and if you worked even harder. And so you're going to go down the street to the library, and I'll pick you up in 2.5 hours, because I have to drive to Brookline to pick up a birthday cake for my granddaughter at Party Favors. So I'll get you home. But for now, you have work to do." So I went, of course, right? And what I realized is that what she gave me was kind of a vision of myself. And it was, she gave me back a version of myself that I hadn't allowed myself to think of for, I don't know, 30 years. So I'm just forever thankful. So the poem I'm going to read is one of the ones I brought to the library that day. I didn't finish it that day. It's taken time, other workshops, constant revision, I guess. But here goes. Hebrew Rehab Center. My mother sits in a nursing home wheelchair, one leg dangling, a useless rudder. Her cheeks are polymer pink, flushed from nursing rounds, from morning rounds with nursing aides. Sorry. Like Odysseus marooned, she pines. Whose country have I come to this time? The girls here are mean. We've broken up her apartment into flotsam, rewritten her story's ending. We measure tides in talcum powder and lost laundry. Her body is a bruise. Thin legs no longer hold her weight. Still, she insists on traveling, unwisely and enraged. All she wants is to poke out somebody's eye. She slaps my offered hands away. Don't need your help, damn it. It is her wheelchair. So she'll spin us outdoors to the courtyard to watch a spasm of sparrows at the feeder. Puffed up, feather proud, their beating wings sharp knives to hunger. Pleased, she asks, "Oh, who are they, these sly ones?" August heat plays chiaroscuro on the veins of her hands. Swollen indigo tracks to a choking heart. Slowly she blinks, and slowly exhales. Do you like my hair? This time, at least, I thought it would take a curl. It's beautiful. Blue silver, a cloud. Thank you.
Wonderful, Carrie. You did the hair. You did the hair. Next up, we have Fran Lunny.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, hey.
It's hard to pick a Barbara poem because they're all Barbara poems, really. And but I'm gonna choose to read the last poem that I workshop with Barbara, which is about Wilson Snowflake Bentley. And I just remember Barbara's, what she shared about the poem, and just her advice, which still stays with me, about always thinking about the language and that being most important. And I just remember her teasing me, saying, "You think you're writing about this photographer from 100 years ago, but you're really writing about yourself." And of course, she was right. And anyway, I was lucky enough to be at Porter Square Books and hear Richard MC a reading. And I had written a little bit in college, and it just seemed to be such a nice, wonderful group of people. And Barbara was obviously revered. I could just pick that up from the reading, and I was so glad I was there, because I just thought I have to become part of this. So I'm so glad that I did. And I was looking through my emails, and I searched Barbara, and the first email that I found was about a publication and an issue of Salamander, and there were a bunch of people from the workshop that had poems in there. And Barbara's email was so charming, and one of the things that she said that I'll never forget is, I think her last line was, "Aren't we so lucky to all know one another?" And I think that's how we feel about Barbara, as a teacher and a friend. And anyway, so here's the poem. Wilson Snowflake Bentley, photographer, 1865 to 1931. He catches snowflakes in a velvet box, in a forest of yellow birch and sugar maple, lungs filled with gathering cold. The tripod legs of his giant camera break the ice. A crow calls as the first flakes drift. He lifts crystals with a feather onto a glass microscope slide, adjusts the pulse of knobs and dials. He experiments with the camera, the smallest aperture, long exposures. Nature's designs come into focus. Hexagonal arms, dendrite stars, jewels never seen before. Perfect symmetry, its own miracle. What is delicate quickly melts away. Summer nights, he hangs a bed sheet on a neighbor's clothesline, projects slides of winter's beauty for the children of Jericho. Thank you.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. Thank you, Fran.
Thanks.
Up next, Carol Hobbs.
Hi, everyone. So I've known Barbara for a very long time. I think for most of the time I've been in the United States, Barbara's been in my life. I was very fortunate to meet her. My daughter was just a little toddler then, and now she's a full-grown woman. It's a life of her own. And Barbara's been such a good friend and a wonderful teacher through all of those years. And I had the great fortune of traveling with Barbara quite often in her summer workshops, and have gone to France and to Newfoundland with her. And I keep thinking about some of those journeys, and some very funny stories come to mind, but also some very touching stories. One of the early times that I went to Newfoundland with Barbara back in the early 2000s, and it was not that long after 9/11, and much of the world had sort of thrown up barriers to travel for the workshop. So Barbara decided it would be Newfoundland that year. And I remember going with her there. We stayed in a huge house in Trinity. And one night, Barbara liked to take baths late at night. And one night she was taking a bath, and we were all in bed asleep. And I woke up and I heard this sound in my closet. I was like, Carol, Carol, help me, Carol. And I didn't know what was happening. So I went to my closet and I opened the door. There was no one there, but I could hear Barbara's voice, Carol, Carol, help me. And so I go out into the hall and across the hall, and I couldn't open Barbara's bedroom door. And she had gotten herself locked in the bathroom of this very old house with this terrible old doorknob. And we could not get her out. We couldn't get into her room. So we went to the kitchen, myself and Deb Vandermolen, and we were looking through all of the kitchen instruments, trying to figure out how we would jimmy this door and get in. I ended up calling the RCMP because we couldn't get a hold of the landlord in this little town of Trinity in the middle of the night in Newfoundland. And eventually we figured out that if she used her toothbrush, she could put it into this old lock and turn it so that she could get herself out of the bathroom. And anyway, that was our big night adventure, and made for a lot of laughs the next day. And the RCMP did show up eventually in the morning, wondering why we had called. But so we had a little encounter with the Mounties. But a lot of that kind of thing went on, and it was just a lot of fun with Barbara all the time. One of the great experiences we had on that trip was a whale watch tour that we took out of Bay Bulls. And I remember that particular time, there were dozens. I think Barbara said she counted 40 humpback whales around our boat at one time. And there were mothers raising their calves up to show us their babies. And Barbara was astounded. She just had such a fascination with just this beauty of the world, and just in awe of what the world could offer us. And I think that Barbara helped me see my world anew. And she was just such a wonderful human, looking at any part of the world we went to. So I'm ever grateful to her. And I'm going to read a poem if I can hold it together. This is called The Child I Was in Summer, and this is a poem in my book that Barbara helped me with, the book and the poem. The Child I Was in Summer. The wind off Hall's Bay pitched long notes that pulled my breath like a jig on a line. My grandmother refused to play with me, so I had to spot whales by myself and count the spouts of whales, 4 and 40. And there's one, and there's another, and every single spout a humpback blowing. I'd call like a crow at her window, lie on the grass and kick up loam around her beds of violets and azaleas. I'd slap down my jump rope, Miss Mary Mac, dressed in black, 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 syllables spilling all over her doorstep. If only she'd come out, she could hold me, tender as a plum, a damson, feel my heart thrumming through the shell of her. Thank you.
Wonderful, Carol. Thank you so much. Beautiful. And now our beloved fellow poet, Manny Iyer.
I have. I'm sorry.
You are good. You are.
I'm sorry. The computer is telling me a lot of things. The host has allowed you to do this, that. This. I had to wait for it to finish talking. Thank you, Richard, and hi everybody. I had a tough time picking my poem to read today because there was Barbara everywhere. But I decided to pick the first poem that I worked with Barbara. It was right after I graduated from an MFA degree, and Eileen said, "Okay, you got to meet Barbara," and she arranged for a meeting with Barbara, just one-on-one. So I took this poem that I had been working for 4 years, and when I walked out, it was, I couldn't believe the transformation she did to my poem. And the first thought that came to me was, why did I just plunk $40,000 into an MFA? I could have just stayed with Barbara, you know. And then I joined a workshop right after that. And what I remember most was a hug. She made it a point, whenever I entered the room, she made it a point to get up from the chair. I'm sorry. And hug me and give me a kiss and lead me to my chair. That was so lovely, so lovely. Made me feel so good. I'm sorry. I miss her. I miss her.
Yeah.
There was a lot of funny moments too. I mean, I had a volunteer who would come with me to take notes, of the workshop, whatever the other poet said about my poem. And after the very first day, she told me, "Hey, you gotta get rid of this volunteer. All she does is eat the snacks on the table." So I'm going to read this poem, the very first poem that I worked with Barbara. The Copper Bowl. Next to the roadside shrine of Lakshmi, goddess of prosperity, I expect him, a heap of tattered flesh, waving, flies off his bruised face with the thump of one hand, the other on his begging bowl. The copper bowl brimmed with coin, dropped by they who hurry away before he blesses them. Still he smiles and raises his arm with a namaste. I never see his leg. He has none. Like clockwork, he shows up on his rollerboard. The monsoon, never a damper. When he does keel over, disinfected air will greet me. A day before another, leprous beggar arrived with board and bowl, ready to fatten the flies. Thank you.
So wonderful, Mani. So heart-filled and heartfelt. Thank you so much.
Richard. Thank you.
Up next, we have Pam Gem.
Oh my goodness. Just so many stories to tell, but I mean, everyone said my sentiments for sure. Barbara was first teacher and then friend, and then somehow she became kin to me and part of my family. So I'm going to read a poem from the pandemic. If I can, you guys. Our birthday sonnet for Barbara Hyett. We're fast friends, sunstruck possibilities. On my dawn into writing, I have my doubts. I call you Babs, which you tell me you love. You are my dear adopted family. You challenge me. My poems like lilies bloom. You are sick. I called to book our visit at Wellesley Alzheimer's Care. You're home, you're quarantined. I missed you and us. We FaceTime. Happy birthday, you say. Read me a poem. You start to teach me, content on your bed. I say your voice is forever inside my head. Your smile flickers, humility. You say, read. You daze and drift, I read. Your blue eyes bask. I say, thanks, Bab. Read another, you ask. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Pam. Up next, Shauna Hill.
Muted. Hi. Wow. It's really good to see all of you. And to think about Barbara and everything that she taught me. And I think like the first thing she taught me was how to be a good student of poetry and how to be a student and to get a thick skin, which I did quickly. And I have like so many stories about her. And one is she came to my wedding, and my husband's uncles kept on getting up and giving speeches at the rehearsal dinner. And finally she got up and she said, well, I'm Shauna's uncle. And she gave a speech. And I was so glad that she was there. And I mean, I could tell a lot of stories, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and read this poem. I had actually chosen a poem called Misgiving Pie to read, which was in honor of her annual Misgiving celebration, to which I was invited once and I couldn't make it. And I did end up writing this poem about the misgiving pie, but I've actually decided to read a different poem because in this poem, I talk about these earwigs that I was terrified of, and I wasn't very nice to these earwigs in my poem. And she said, maybe you should learn to love these earwigs, because she wrote a poem about loving cockroaches. And she also wanted me to love myself in the poem, which she always wanted me to do. So this poem is called Camp Downer. It's about these earwigs. The earwig chorus plays all night in cabin 8, where we fake sleep. All of us pretending we are not afraid of earwigs, but we are. If I lay on my side, will they enter, plant a baby in my ear? In the morning, we stand for mail call in cabin lines, descending by age and height. They give us bug juice while we wait. Cabin 8 mail, Shauna Hill. I run proud, like I'm really loved. My secret desire, a goodie box. By lunch, it's 50s day. We girls wear ponytails and rolled up jeans. I twirl in the center of my powder blue circle skirt, my collar kerchiefed. I've got a care package to open. Back at the bunks, I open the carton. I plot my days. Brownies first, a marathon bar, then my favorite, cookies boiled to the candy point, wrapped in wax. I will relish. Keep the box closed until Sunday. I open them. Glossy wings across a cookie. A copper body rests on my indulgence. The entire earwig corral, devouring in song. Thanks.
Insect love. I love it. Thank you, Shauna. Up next, Eileen Cleary.
Hi, thank you so much, Richard. I think that as Manny said, I met Barbara while I was at Leslie, and so the few minutes of free writing at the end of each of her workshops is a time I dreaded, because I was so used to censoring and critiquing myself, afraid to follow the impulses of my mind, afraid to share my thoughts. And Barbara was infinitely encouraging no matter what I managed to scratch out onto the page. And that gave me so much courage then and now. And I know all of the applauding that she did was not for the writing so much as because she knew what courage it took for me to write. So here, I chose an uncensored kind of clash sonnet for a friend who died at the time I was attending Barbara's workshops, and it has its origins in one of her free writes. Willing the angel. Death too early, little death in me, she ill prepared. 2 more days, 3 at best, still I wanted, but she left soundlessly, a bell unstruck in my heart's greensward, the wind confusing the grass. Who goes there? A field, as if Wyeth's Christina never crawled its pasture, body refusing its presence. She had to be hand-fed. What's the consensus? For you were not hungry, and I did not feed. The grains assembling into uneaten, all that threshing and winnowing for naught, spent toast, the small tiger unbagging itself. It was out all along. She had already selected her velvet gown, vigiling. We were the last souls allowed, our past lives, little folklores. Never wanted a wheelchair, never sanctioned a narrow saddle. Instead, blue wind, air, a yawning door. Thank you.
So gorgeous, Eileen. Beautiful elegy. Up next, Linda Lamenza.
Hi. I have so much to say that I will keep it brief instead. So my brief story is that Barbara taught me how to be strong and how to be a survivor and how to get it on paper. And so I chose my first poem that I had in print in 2014 in Comstock Review called My Mother's Pane de España. What I wanted was to become less neutral. I wanted to distinguish wet from dry, sugar and egg yolks at low and at medium speed, to purify powder from pebble, in one bowl grief, in the other peaks of strength, pour together, sit and watch myself through the stained oven door, flour dusted in a heap, wait, pull away from the sides of that pan, rise high above the rim, rest before the serving, turn the house upside down. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. Up next, but I've got to find her, Margot Wazansky. Ah, there you are.
Here. Hi, everyone. It's so good to see all of your faces. It's wonderful. When Barbara was no longer able to teach her workshops, we formed our own leaderless weekly workshop with PoemWorks members in the spring of 2019, continuing through the depths of the pandemic when we shifted to Zoom and meeting weekly to this day, using the format that we knew so well from Barbara. First business, then a host poem, workshopping our individual poems, and concluding with a free write using a line from the host poem. Our writing and publishing have been thriving. Many individual poems and 7 books have been published by our workshop members just in the last maybe 2.5 years, and 2 artist fellowships from the Mass Cultural Council. When, yeah, I guess that's all I was going to say. And next is Wendy.
Hi, everyone. This is so moving, and I love seeing everyone and hearing these stories and poems. So to pick up where Margot left off, when we met after a weekly workshop to brainstorm how to share the ways in which our group is processes and honors Barbara's spirit and teaching, we decided nothing could be better than to demonstrate this by using a line from the host poem we had used that day and to write with Barbara in our hearts. The prompt was, you sit at the window and listen. And here are our free writes, unedited, as they poured out of each of us for 4 minutes and 19 seconds. And Shali, yours is first.
Yes.
Hello. Hi, everyone. So good to be here to celebrate Barbara. You sit at a window and listen, not the goldfinch on the hill, not the blue jade, but a voice so familiar. When we sat together each week with Barbara to discuss our poetry writing, her voices keep lingering in our continued after Barbara group. Often someone will mention, Barbara said so or so when we were in a hot debate. We then smile and found a direction to walk toward unknown deep woods. Thank you.
Up next, I believe, is Sarah Snyder.
Hi, everyone. Gosh, what a pleasure it is to hear both Barbara's words and everybody else's. Before I read mine, I just wanted to, today I went up and counted all my journals that where I start all of my just writes. And I've been doing it with Barbara. I think it was, I know this sounds crazy, but I took a class with her, Teachers as Scholars, I think 30 years ago, and then started doing other things with her. And then when she let me enter, when I retired, the Monday morning just writes in her home, and we've continued that. So this is my 49th journal that I have, and it really is the beginning of pretty much every poem that I write. So I'll read my piece that I wrote. You sit at a window, listen for another voice, not there, but there. How we all have her voice in the rafters of us, that hovering, those pale stars that seem like a guiding or a constellation we know by heart. We weigh our words, scrape the goodness from the bottom and the sides, leave those hours falling toward a better poem, her words a figuring of what is missing, of what needs to be found.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah. Up next, we have Connemara Wadsworth.
Here she is.
You're muted.
Yeah, you gotta turn it on. You're muted.
Volume, is your volume up?
Shall we come back to you? Yeah, I see that you're unmuted, but I don't hear you. That has something to do with volume. We'll come back to you. Let me introduce Mary Lou Maloney.
No, Wendy is next.
Oh, that's right. Let's go with Wendy.
Hi, everyone. Before I read what I wrote, I'd like to just expand a little on our lost story, which Alexis read. It's so wonderful to have a poem that's also a shared memory. And we were really, really lost. This was on the way to Montelieu in France. And Barbara had said she would navigate. This was before GPS, and we were really jet lagged to begin with. And I was driving like a 6-speed stick shift, and I had driven a stick shift as a teenager, and it was a Carmen Gia. She kept calling me Carmen Gia. You know, come on, Carmen Gia, you can do it. So we got to this dead end because we missed all the turns, and we were on a dirt road, and there were ditches. And Barbara got out, and she said, "Oh, I think you can turn around." And there was no way I could turn around. And
There were some
so
guys came out and helped us.
I really had to, I had to pee, so I got out, and then I actually saw there was a field, and there were all these people there, and turned out they were men, and there were a bunch of dogs there. So we walked over to the field, kind of like either, you know, our heroes or we were going to be in deep trouble. And I said in my terrible French something like, "What are you doing here?" And I thought they said we're the adult club of Carcassonne. They said, it said we're the dog club of Carcassonne. And they were very kind and showed me how to, instead of pushing the stick shift down, to pull it up. So, and we were on our way. So, yeah, so many wonderful, wonderful memories of dear Barbara. This was my free write that day. You sit at a window and listen. Barbara's listening with me now as I let the poem flow over me, as I hear how to move the words like a shuffleboard, sliding the first line to the end, eliding 2 phrases, replacing an ill-fitting title. Barbara would say, "Here's the heat." So I scratch out 3 lines to get there sooner. And here she is saying, "You can go deeper." And here, slick your syntax into a sleeveless black cocktail dress. Now throw out when, throw out tell. What the hell? I need a detail right here, and then you will break my heart.
Thank you, Wendy. Shall I move on to Margot?
Well, is Steve here?
He is not.
He's not. Okay. Well, I can read what he wrote, and then I'll read mine.
Okay, great.
It's from Steve. You sit at a window and listen to that remembered voice, occasionally impatient, but almost always encouraging. And you feel the force of that personality who taught you to say in words what can't be said in words. And here's mine. You sit at a window and listen with Barbara in your head. Or you look in the fridge and pull out a head of lettuce. Write, and the poem will tell you the lettuce has mystery inside, but don't say secret. As it unfolds, the darkest green outside and the inside lighter and lighter until the smallest leaf curls round as a baby. And think of what the lettuce says about you, what you can't tell.
Thank you, Margot. Wonderful. If anyone
Is Connemara, just wondered if Connemara can get on now. and read
I'm going to
her.
say if anyone can help her, let her know in the chat. But
Well, what
now
could be
she's,
what she wrote, we all have it.
Yeah.
oh, okay, that'd be great. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do that.
I can read it. You sit at a window and listen. I came in fragile. What kept me coming back? Muffled by the puzzle of words that matched what I carried. I was not the only one, not the only one. I'm still here. Hear her daring me to show up, tell it slant, touch the shark, to challenge my self-made boundaries and leap. Her table has become many constellations. She remains a North Star.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you so much. And now our anti-penultimate reader and oldest friend of Barbara, Mary Lou Maloney.
Hi, thank you. I met Barbara when I was 22 and she was 23. And we taught at LaSalle Junior College. And they asked Barbara and me and this very elderly lady who was probably 60 as opposed to the rest of us right now, to take the kids to Bermuda. So this is sort of my telling a story about Barbara. Playing bingo in Bermuda. N31 begins the opening number. G54 comes next. Margaret was thrilled. Her hand was touching each card, looking for the numbers that had just been announced. B4. Margaret's eyes were wide open, but Barbara was not happy. The last place she wanted to be was in the Bermuda bingo parlor. Barbara's feet started to move back and forth. Her knees started to dance with her toes. She did try to stay in her chair, and her mouth was quiet. Margaret looked like she might have a bingo. She was beaming, but Barbara's head was down, almost meeting her knees. Barbara the poet had far more interest in Elie Wiesel than the bingo numbers I-25 or B-16. Poor Margaret be damned.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Up next, Spencer Thurlow.
Hi, everyone. This is just really cool to hear, everyone's stories. And it's cool too to hear poems connected to them. I think, that's very, I'm meaningful and yeah, I'm so glad that we have, this reading, where we're sharing, and then we also have that glorious sort of launch last month with the book with the Come Thunder. And so everyone's telling their how I met Barbara stories. I actually met Barbara through Alexis Ivy. She invited me to quote this party one time, and it turned out to be Barbara's. I don't know which birthday it was, but it was around 2013, something like that. So I'm I think relatively well, newer member of PoemWorks, and so I was like, okay, like this party. And then through that, I introduced myself, and I introduced myself as a writer because I'd studied creative writing and written short stories and stuff. And she's like, oh yeah, I used to be that too. And then I became a poet. And I was like, huh, and I had this like private journal of poetry, but never considered it sort of serious. In college myself, I declared that poetry was dead, and of course I had an argument with my teacher, but that was a few years before meeting Barbara. And then sort of through that I joined the workshop, and she really showed me that you can, you can tell a story with a poem, but you can also, you don't have to let the poem sort of own you or be, I think a lot of what she teaches is to say that, to sort of take control of a poem, don't let it get away. It doesn't have to, how do I say this? Be part, you can be part of it, but then you can also move on from it. And I think that's what a lot of the this is. So I'm and I could say a lot more. I just, every time, every one of you have spoken, I think, oh, well, I could like talk about that and this and other things too. But I'm going to read the first poem I actually brought to workshop that we all decided was a finished poem. I'm sure I brought other drafts that are in the scraps folder, which is a couple hundred random Word documents, but this one made it out somehow in 2013 or 2014. And it's titled Ashford Street. So Ashford Street. Sometimes I see my naked neighbor take his naked things to someplace else. There is one fork between us. We wash it for each other. So, hey, you kids, keep playing. Don't listen to my yelling, telling you to come and party in my shrink-wrapped clock and empty box-filled kitchen. From my couch, I hear a siren, an ice cream truck. It does not know that the people on the street today have grown. Still, I throw my boots on, wrap myself in blankets, chase it down. So that poem said, okay, now I can write. That's what I felt after I'd completed that. So thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Spencer.
Yeah.
Before I bring on our ultimate reader, I want to bring back Chao Li.
I just want to say a few things about Barbara, because when I came to the group, I had no English poetry background at all. But Barbara is so patient and paid so much attention to my writing. And I was so afraid in the beginning in two aspects. So when I write in the beginning, I write just surface things, or not a story about China, because I was even afraid to mention that era. But Barbara insisted that I need to say either Mao's era or something, because I just had so much fear. But Barbara really pushes very hard. She keeps telling me, you're safe now, and then you can write, you need to dig deeper. So with her help and the group's help, I published the first poem. Then in 7 years, my first poetry collection will be published in April by Future Cycle Press. So I just have so much gratitude for Barbara and for the group. Without this harsh but love help, I wouldn't be here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes she will make me cry, but it did work.
And now our final reader with some final grace notes. Here is Eric Hyett.
Hi, everybody, and I apologize for being a little bit late today. It's Teddy's father's birthday, and so anyway, thank you all. And when Richard said he was going to be kind enough to do an event on a Sunday so that I could attend it, I was really, really excited, because we've listened to a lot of content recently. We've heard Alexis read my mom's work. We've been at this beautiful book launch, but we haven't had a chance to open our mouths and share our responses and our creative response, both to Come Thunder and to the decades of experience working with Barb. So I come on this call and I hear Margot casually say, oh yeah, we've had 7 books published and 2 of us won the Mass Cultural Council. Like, it's no big deal, right? Like, I didn't win the Mass Cultural Council. It's a huge deal. And I just want to point out that whatever my mom put in motion is just continuing in us. Okay, so can we kind of all agree we're pretty much her core group? There's a few people that are also in her core group, but can we just agree to keep going with whatever this is, our writing, and taking it seriously and internalizing that message? A lot of people wrote about internalizing my mother's voice and my mom's message, and I think that's what we're made of now. So this won't happen when I get Alzheimer's and have to go into a facility. No one's going to go around reading my work. Okay, my mom did something special in her life to cause other people to want to behave the way that we're behaving. So whatever this is unique. But as of today, as far as I'm concerned, it's ours now. Okay, like it's my mother's legacy, but it lives in us. We are all the heirs to her literary estate, if you will, and her way of thinking. So try to remember that going forward. I don't want this to have the feel of any kind of like a memorial. First of all, Barbara's alive and pretty well. And more importantly, we've got a lot more to write, a lot more. So we can't dwell in grief. And I really loved hearing the funny anecdotes from today. So I was deciding what to read poetry-wise, but first I really have to thank Richard for just doing this and making this space for us. Richard, it's kind of powerful. It's somewhere between a reading and something else. So really, thank you so much for making this happen. I have to thank Alexis for going around the country and playing the role of Barbara in such a innovative way. Alexis, even with a cold, what you bring to your reading of my mom's work is something that you bring out different notes than even she would have brought out. And that's I hear Mary Lou laughing because it's true, right? It's totally true.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So yeah, there's a kind of generosity of spirit that my mom inspired. So I'm going to read a poem that that's been through a lot, and it's been through a lot thanks to these people. I wrote that poem in New Mexico. First of all, my mom wasn't even the real person. It was Alexis that kicked it off, but then I changed it to my mother when I wrote the poem. And then Shauna sent the poem out for me to a magazine called Juked, and Juked magazine published it. Spencer was there with me when this happened. I think he's quoted in the poem. And so it was one of those things that just happened at one of my mother's travel retreats in New Mexico. They were hard. If you ever traveled with Barbara, it was really hard because she didn't back down or let up. It didn't have the vibe of a vacation. It was more like a military boot camp. It really had much more of that kind of a vibe than it did of a vacation vibe. It wasn't like, oh, let's see the sights and by the way, write some poetry. It was like, let's write for hours every day, like our life depends on it, and then have a meal. That was my experience year after year at all of these different places. And yeah, I think that's what I can say is that whatever my mom's theories were and practices and philosophies were, they dwell in all of us. And I just want us to remember that going forward, and to kind of take those on as our own and just be like, oh yeah, I'm PoemWorks, I'm Barbara, I know all that stuff. And then see what happens for the next 50 poems that we write each and see if that affects us. All right, so the poem's called Night Event. My mother texts me that the stars are finally out. I'm standing in a parking lot and the stars are mind-boggling. If you're looking for the center of the galaxy, it's right over there. Lately, I've been disparaging the stars. Sing me a nighttime bright, untroubled by sleep or stars. That was me last week in Alston, caught off guard at 2 a.m. in the hot glow of the Blanchard's liquor sign, blue, red, and pink, and the sky wild with airplanes and satellites, and the total absence of the moon. Next to my bed, a tin milagro my mother bought at the holy shrine at Chimayo to heal my mind. Stars that burn darkness into soft compliance. Stars crossing a point in space. Stars come to their cosmic point. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, Eric. What a great coda to our reading today. I want to open it up now. First, I want to, we do have the first Friday of next month. We'll have Jacqueline Sullivan and Diane Silvestri. and forthcoming readings with Heather Nelson and Carrie Loftman, as well as Linda Lemenza and potentially even Lori Kagan. So lots to look forward to. But I want to open it up because I'm hoping that Barbara will be able to access this recording, and you might want to say a few words directly to her.
We love you, Barbara. You're in our hearts for sure.
Hello, Barbara. It's Sandy. I miss you terribly. And, but I laugh a lot when I think about the fun we had together.
I want to say that in the words of Dorothy Parker, you raised me from a couplet. And it's still true.
Hi, Barbara, it's Kathy. I love you. And I'll never forget the day you looked at some random writing that I had in my hand and said, there's poetry in there.
Hi, Barbara. I miss you so much. You know, I'm far away now in Florida, and I don't get to Boston much. My son's in Rhode Island, so whenever I can, I'll try. I miss you and love you. You've given us so much, and chocolate and wine. Those were the fun things. Bye.
Hi, Barbara. It's Carol. I just wanted to say thank you for the poetry and the friendship. I love you dearly.
Hey, Babs, it's Pam Jam. Wanted to say thank you for poetry, friendship. Thank you for listening to all of us today. We love you. We miss you.
Hi, Barbara. This is Xiaoli. And whenever I see you smile, and I'm so happy and see your high spirit. And we love you so much.
Hi, Barbara. It's Margot. You invited me into the workshop in 1998 when our friend Caroline died, and I was just writing. I didn't know what I was writing, but I was writing because I had to do something with those images. And I thought that I had nothing else to write about. And here I am, 24 years later, and have just had a book accepted for publication, which has not one poem about our friend Caroline in it. So thank you.
Hi, Barbara. It's Susan McDonough. I've been out of the poetry scene for a little while, but please don't think that poetry has been out of my life. You are one of the biggest influences in my life. And I think of you every day. And I'm so grateful to have ever met you and know you. And that will never leave me. So just sending you love and saying, South Jersey still lives strong.
Hi, Barbara, it's Shauna. Somewhere I have a video of you dancing at a poetry party. And I called the video How Poets Party. And think of you when I see it. I miss you. I love you. I'm grateful to you.
Hi, Barbara. It's Carrie Loftman, or Lochman, as you used to tease me, that I mispronounced it. I just want to say thank you so much for all the advice and the kick in the pants that you gave me, and for leaving me in amidst all of these wonderful people at PoemWorks. It's quite a community. Thanks.
Hi, Barb. We had a wonderful day on Friday, and I hope we have lots and lots and lots more. Love you, Mary Lou.